Grassroots Warrior Network, and we have another attorney on here, Brandon Williams. You've become famous lately. We'll start with how are you doing this evening, Brandon?
Good, good. Thank you. Yeah, I'm where did you hear about me from? Where you heard about me from multiple sources or?
I from the internet, of course, the
Oh
new
yeah, yeah.
alternative news, and my admin actually found you. They sent me a video, and I'm like, man, I know this stuff. We're talking about the sovereign movement, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
the nationalist movement. Is that correct? And grammar fraud. We're going to get you have a system that's actually working for a lot of people, and we talked off air because I've been a part of that system, and I'm involved and interested. At the same time, running for governor, I can't. As soon as I get back into that, again, enter as a candidate, I'm back into that system. I put myself into that system. So we're talking about driving around with no license plates. We're talking about living as a free, live human. I don't know if human beings. You got to be careful with the words. As a live man on God's earth, right? Let's get
There's a lot
into.
of fear about using certain words. My platform isn't like that. My platform's different in a lot of ways. First off, we're very like fun and jokey. We have like a lot of silliness and pickles and all sorts of goofiness, right? And the second thing is we don't run from words they have hijacked from us. We are taking back those words. We are redefining those words, and we actually literally start off lawsuits, start off things, start off communications with definitional changes that we force them to accept.
Wow.
This whole
Well,
running around and not using certain terms and being careful, that's over. I have personally made it my mission that we don't do that. Another thing that we don't do anymore is that when we are sued, this whole fixation on drop the case, drop the case, drop the case. No, we're not doing that anymore either. The way I'm teaching it now, which is a fairly recent change, is that we immediately counterclaim and go right at their neck, and we actually prevent and stop all dismissals. Once they come for us, we're coming for them. End
I
of
love
story.
that. And
So
then
that's
people who watch me, that's the same thing. In fact,
yeah,
it's amazing now because I don't have to look for the bad guys. They come to me, and then
yeah,
we flip the script and make it about them. So you're doing the same exact thing.
yeah.
Let's start again. Where are you from? Give us a little bit of your background. How'd you get involved with law?
I'm an Indiana boy, born and raised. So I was born in a small town called Chesterton, Indiana. I was raised there, and then I moved to a farm in the middle of nowhere when I was about 10. So I grew up as kind of like a farm boy. I didn't like it much, but I was there. I experienced that, and that was my whole upbringing. Guns and motorcycles and working on cars and stuff, which I enjoyed those things. The farm life specifically was something I never really got much into.
A
But
lot of
the
work there, huh?
yeah, a lot of work, and it's just kind of never was never really my thing. I was always kind of more of a nerd and into computers, but I loved motorcycles, loved guns, loved all the good stuff of that life. So a lot of things about that I do love. But
Right.
Indiana's cool. I was raised in Midwest style. Basically very traditional, very American, honestly. Now I live in California, which everybody thinks is an insane place, but actually a lot of cool things happening here. Everything's happening here. Everyone's here, from the top to the bottom to the weirdest to the coolest. Everything in between is all here. It's a very very busy, very very large place, and this whole reputation that California has is a little bit sad to me. It's a beautiful place in a lot of ways. I really enjoy being here. There's a lot of freedom fighters here. A lot.
Mhm.
Uh, they just don't get the floor as much. The control in California that they have over everything is very tight. So a lot of those kind of people are never going to get platforms or whatnot. But it doesn't mean they're not here. Doesn't mean they're not really trying as best they can, and they got a
I
lot of
love
good
it.
stuff going on. So
California is a beautiful state, and I've always said the
yeah.
same thing about Vermont. We're blue if you look at the map, but if you talk to the people, we're strong, independent, conservative people. We're the
Hmm.
most accepting, tolerant. We'll give you the shirt right off our back. And the same, my experiences in California. I'm used to Northern California, and you have
Mm,
country. You have beautiful. People think of LA and all the city.
that's right.
California is huge. It's very diverse, and
So
it's
big. Yeah.
as far as voting, and I mean, you guys are a superpower, and I think we watch what's happening to California, and it's appalling. But it's the same thing in Vermont. I don't recognize my own state anymore, so
Yeah.
that's why we created this network. Actually, is so that the other side got a voice for a change, and what a voice you've had. So again,
Thank you.
you get involved with law, and when did that? I mean, right out of like
Yeah.
right off the farm.
No. So law was I took over a landscaping company with a couple friends, and the employment development department, which is the employment tax and employment legality arm of the government, Mafia essentially, decided they wanted to trespass on one of my job sites and start interrogating my employees and then send me bills. And I went to a few professionals, quote unquote, because they're totally not. And lawyers and accountants told me, oh, just make a payment plan. And I'm thinking in my head, make a payment plan for what? Extortion? I don't think that's going to work for me. Uh, so I fired everybody, got rid of everybody. They're all losers, and all the professionals, the accountants and lawyers.
Yeah.
And I said, no. I said, and I had this person here in LA who was running the local assembly. It's basically like all the people that are kind of organizing all of this information and stuff in a way, right? And
Yeah.
she had been trying to tell me about this stuff for 2 years, and I kept telling her, God, no, you're crazy. CIA is going to come smashing through your windows. You're done, man. There's no way I'm getting involved in that. And but at that point in time, when the EDD was coming for me, that was enough to push me into making an appointment with her and saying, hey, I'm finally ready for this.
Self-defense mode. And
I'm
just so
feeling,
people
yeah,
know, we're talking about citizen grand juries, the new citizen government, right?
yeah,
Because they work for us. Like
yeah,
a lot of people forgot that,
yeah,
right? So we're doing it ourselves. So that's what you're talking about, and that's what we're talking about with the sovereign movement.
yeah. Well, sovereign movement, it's gotten kind of a bad name, and the reason why is because it's so convoluted and confusing and difficult to understand. And I think the thing that I've done really well, I'm kind of a newcomer, but I've spent almost every waking minute of every waking day for 2 years. So it seems as though I've
Lifetime.
sprung out of the ether so fast. And the reason why is because I have been utterly fixated to the point where I don't really do much of anything else ever. uh, I've just been so enjoying this and just enjoying studying it and enjoying going down these rabbit holes so rapidly. And so a
And
couple of
kicking
years, I've
ass.
gotten really far in a couple of years. Yeah. So
I was gonna say you're kicking ass too. So
yeah, thank
that's
you.
always enjoyable when you're actually winning. That's what I said.
Yeah.
That's why I was impressed by the system. And we've talked about there was a kid in again, a traffic violation, right? He gets pulled over with no plates, a kid in Utah we talked about off air. And he tried to not comply. He ended up giving the cop a passport and ended up getting shot like 20 times in the face, right? So sometimes you got to take the ride and beat the rap. But the system that you've got going, it, I mean, it seems to be working. You don't have any problem. You've done this for a long time
No,
with a
we don't
lot
have
of
any
success,
issues.
and they leave you alone because you get them, you flip it right at the beginning. So can we get into that a little bit? I mean,
Yeah, a lot of these videos that you see online of people getting killed or horrible things happen, they're very, very combative. And they're very, very, and you can say compliance, non-compliance, you can say whatever you want. It's when you understand the basics of, let's say, for example, a traffic stop, it's very, very simple. A traffic stop is a complaint. The word complaint in law means lawsuit. So a traffic ticket is a micro, teeny little lawsuit, and whatever it is inside that lawsuit is essentially a breach of contract, right?
Mhm.
And the way that it operates is that because you have so the definition of the term naturalization comes from 8 USC 1101 subsection A23. The term naturalization states naturalization is the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. So the way it works is this: on voter registration, on your driver's license, and on any official documentation, when you say you are a resident of state of California, you just conferred the nationality of the state of California upon yourself after birth by any means whatsoever. That's called naturalization. Everybody is naturalized into either the United States, which doesn't mean what you think it means, or state
Yeah.
of California, which also doesn't mean what you think it means.
Mhm.
Naturalization is what creates a contractual agreement into the traffic laws of that particular state. A ticket is a complaint for breach of contract. There had to have been some previous naturalization in order for there to be a breach of contract. And what's so crazy to people, what people don't realize is you only live in state of California because you conferred the nationality of the state of California upon yourself after birth by any means whatsoever. You can live in California without legally living in California at all. And that's the thing where you talk about the sovereign movement. But the problem is that sovereign from what? United States. In 28 USC 3002, subsection 15, the United States means, and the first definition is a federal corporation. Then you look inside of the Uniform Commercial Code, Article 9, Section 307, UCC 9-307, which I can show these if you want to do a screen share.
I love that you can just rattle them off the top of your head because you're so in depth with it. You have screen sharing capability. If you'd like to use it, sure.
It's always more fun. I always
Yeah,
prefer to
I like
show than
visuals.
tell. Yeah. So 28 USC, I'm going to go back over the ones I've already mentioned as well. That way I can not be a talking head, which I do not enjoy. So this is 28. This first number here, for people who are new to this information, you can go to the US Code and you can see that the United States Code is divided by titles. Each title is essentially a section of law, right? Now we're going to go to Title 28, which is this first number represents the title. This represents the body of law we're looking inside of. This is a section symbol, and this is the section number of that title. Okay. So 28 USC 3002, subsection 15 says the United States means a federal corporation. Now we're going to open up a new tab. We're going to go to UCC 9-307. We're going to find out where is that corporation located. Subsection H, location of the United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. Now we're going to go to 42 USC 9102, and we're going to look at what is the definition of the term U.S. citizen. Subsection 18. United States citizen means A, any individual who is a citizen of the United States by law, birth, or naturalization.
Mhm.
Law means contractual, so it has to be some kind of contractual obligation there for it to be by law. By birth doesn't even really matter because you can be born in the District of Columbia and then move, and you can still change your nationality based off of where you currently live or domicile. So birth doesn't really mean much of anything. Naturalization is where all the treasure lies.
Mhm.
Naturalization. Term naturalization is defined in 8 USC 1101, subsection A23, which I covered earlier. I'm going to show it to you.
And for people watching, this is literally as soon as you purchase a hunting license, a driver's license, again, if you run for governor like me, you are being naturalized.
Anytime you confer nationality of a state upon yourself or actually any of your companies, because we're going to get into that in a moment too, you are naturalizing that person. And we're going to clean that up right now. So the term naturalization
Mhm.
means the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. Now, for people who are new to this information, what is the definition of the word person? Person means an individual or an organization. And if you want to get more specific, you can go to the Internal Revenue Code's definition section, which is Title 26, subsection A1. The term person shall be construed to mean and include an individual, a trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation. So when you're born, there's a corporation of your name in all capital letters that's created through the birth certificate when it's processed by the local health officer at the Department of Health and Human Services.
Mhm.
And if we go to my website, just so I can find some of these definitions super fast, there's a couple terms that I like to use that are more clean than the term straw man, which is often what's used. I stay away from that term as much as possible. These terms are much more clean. These terms are much more specific. And these terms are actually terms that come straight out of the legal system. Term number one is the term public corporation. A public corporation is one created by the state for political purposes and to act as an agency in the administration of civil government. And if you would like to find this definition for yourself, this is a subsection inside of the definition of the term corporation found in Black's Law Dictionary. It's not its own definition. You have to find it under the definition of corporation. You'll see a section where they're talking about the public corporation. Another term that's very, very good that I like very, very much is the term ens legis. This term means a creature of the law, an artificial being as contrasted with a natural person, applied to corporations, considered as deriving their existence entirely from the law. This would be associations, partnerships, trusts, corporations, etc. So now if we reread this previous section that we were looking at, this 8 USC 1101, the term naturalization, this will make more sense to you now. The term naturalization means the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person, which could be anything, after birth by any means whatsoever. So that means that you can have a bunch of corporations. Okay. You can have 6 different corporations. And if you confer the nationality of a state upon any of those persons, you are naturalizing those persons into absolutely any area of which you would like to locate them. Essentially, you can think of your life and your all caps name and your corporations and your trusts as little chess pieces or little Monopoly pieces. And instead of rolling a dice and getting a 12 and moving across the board, you can simply say, I confer the state of Boardwalk upon this particular piece after birth by any means whatsoever. And you instantaneously move that particular playing piece to Boardwalk. When you fill out W-9 forms, when you fill out a driver's license, when you fill out these different licenses, when you do these various things, what they're trying to do essentially, and why all those things exist, is they exist in order to naturalize you into a body of laws. Once you're naturalized into those body of laws, they can now write complaints or lawsuits on breach of contract for those laws. So you say the word sovereign. A person who has not naturalized into state of Vermont or state of California doesn't actually legally live there, because when you go down that rabbit hole, you find out that state of California or state of Vermont, those are not the original names of those states. And those are actually corporate entities that are located in the District of Columbia, just like United States.
No.
So
I
when
know
you,
I had a question too, because I know New Hampshire specifically, and I think Vermont also, we have the federal constitution, but we also have individual state constitutions. And I think there's like in the old days when if I wanted to move from New Hampshire to Vermont, I literally had to give up my nationality. I am no longer a citizen, right? A national of New Hampshire, and I want to come into this. Is that what you're talking about? It's the same thing. And corporations, isn't part of this the problem that a corporation can't do business with like a person, an individual? They can only do business with another corporation. Isn't that what we're really
I've
talking
never particularly seen that in black and white. I try to tie everything down that I can. I have heard that many times.
about?
The definition of a public corporation is pretty clear. It may or may not be that way, but for whatever reason, they do like it to be that way, whether it is 100% or factual. A public corporation is one created by the state for political purposes and to act as an agency in the administration of civil government. So I call it the portal. For whatever reason, these corporations of our names have been created as some sort of intermediary or reference point or relay point between ourselves as a living man or woman
Right.
and the corporate world. These corporations are public corporations. They're very clear as to what that means.
Well, and aren't you, I mean, what I'm catching by this and what it sounds like, so we have 2 entities for everybody
two entities.
watching this. You
Yeah.
have the
Persons.
corporate entity, Kevin, and
Persons.
then the other regular man, Kevin. What you're doing is you're utilizing both of those.
That's
You're
precisely
still a
right.
person, but you're acting, and depending on what instance that we're talking about, sometimes you have to act as the straw man, and other times you get to act as Brandon, right? I mean, am I following that?
Yeah, I don't like to use the word straw man, and the other thing
Right,
is that
you said that.
it's kind of one of those things where people think it's such a bad thing, this whole public corporation ends legis situation.
Mhm.
I don't think it is. I think it's actually very useful because what does a corporation give you in a commercial activity?
What do they give you?
They give you limited liability.
Oh, yep.
So by having an ens legis and operating within the confines of the federal government, which is based entirely off of commercial activity, it gives you limited liability in the commercial world. So not only is it a relay station, but it's sort of like a protective shield as well for you if you
Right.
utilize it correctly. I don't find the ens legis to be something bad. I find it to be something actually very useful and very important. And if someone were to try to come along and take it from me, I'd probably be very upset, and I wouldn't want that actually.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, you
and
you
to answer
understand
your,
it though. You can
yeah,
utilize it where most people, like we've again off air talked about, even the people who know the lingo, and when you get into a court of law, especially, it's like reading Egyptian hieroglyphs for most people, right? Only a
yeah,
fool represents themselves in court. Well, that'd be me. But
yeah.
I always figure, I got the truth on my side and Jesus is my attorney. I know I don't need a lawyer to lose in court. And so far it's worked out pretty good for me, but again, most people it doesn't. I watch people time and time again. Doesn't matter how much evidence you have, how right you can be, the rules, the law, the Constitution, they seem like they're only for little people like you and me. Where these guys, the corporation, they do whatever they want with impunity. Uh, Again, that's the duality of, I guess, of the legal system, right? That's my
The legal system, I don't believe that the troubles that people are having, I think we talked about this earlier, maybe it was on the last show. I was just off a show literally right before this.
yeah.
The problem is this: when you enter anyone's home or any business or any activity, and you're acting in a very belligerent way, and you're being very rude, and being very mean, and you're being very stern, people don't appreciate that, and a lot of it gets pinned on judges and lawyers is a whole different subject. What's the one profession that Jesus said, be careful. These people are, the lawyers, they're the only people I don't add into this. I don't care if you're a cop. I don't care if you run a jail. I don't care if you're a drug trafficker, not like horrible things like human trafficking, but like you can sell drugs. You can do, I don't really, lawyers are the only ones that I'm like, I don't really want to, it's the one thing that I'm just not in, and I'm a lawyer. I'm a different type of lawyer than what anybody's ever seen, but it's the one thing that I just, and people, what they do is they go in and they fight the judge. And the truth is that the judge is not usually 96% of the time, 98% of the time, not your enemy. He becomes your enemy because of the way you're behaving, right?
Well,
And the thing is that you don't need to behave that way. And the judge can be your friend. And the judge will assist you to crush the lawyers. And that's the most fun thing I've ever done in my entire life
wow.
is getting judges to help me crush lawyers. It's like it's a sexual experience. It's a spiritual experience. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened in my life. And I could do it all day long until the day I die, come back next time around and just do it all over again a whole lifetime. And I'd be the happiest guy in the world.
A
Okay.
little
So
gratification there. I got you.
absolutely wonderful. I give everyone the benefit of the doubt, except lawyers. Now, with that
Yeah.
said, I want to go back to what you were saying here because I have a website here. This is not the best source of information. I understand that, but anyways, all the different states had certain names when they were, Now you live in a very unique area, which is the original area. A lot of really, really dense, beautiful history there, right?
Oh, wicked.
Now, the original names for all of these very small states that we see on the upper east side of our country here, a lot of them had this name, Crown Colony of, Crown Colony of. This
Mhm.
is the actual name of the physical non-incorporated state of where you live.
Interesting.
Now, if you scroll down here, you're going to see the changes. We got the Vermont Republic. We got a big
Mhm.
change there. We've
Wow.
got Virginia, didn't even really have much of a name. At one point in time, it was the District of Kentucky and it had some other names, but
I didn't know this.
Tennessee is
Okay.
actually called the Southwest Territory. So saying that you live in state of Tennessee is a corporation located in the District of Columbia, and you're naturalizing into that corporation's space. When you say I live in or I domicile in or I'm a resident of the Southwest Territory, that's what people think is the actual Tennessee.
Wow.
Territory of Orleans. That was the original name for Louisiana. My home state isn't called the state of Indiana. It's called Indiana Territory. I don't live in state of
Now,
Indiana.
is this because, again, a lot of these places, like my hometown, Bennington, Vermont, that was actually founded under British rule. Like I'm seeing the crown. It's the first place that I went. Is this the English influence?
Of course. I mean, this was, that's all of these little states in the Upper East. Boy, there's a lot of history. I don't even know tons about it, but yeah, they were literally crown colonies, full
Mhm.
blown.
Yeah.
And then, that eventually exploded into warfare and the whole nine yards. But, and I don't know tons about that. You guys probably know more about that than anybody
Same
because,
soil. My great grandfather, I always get the opportunity and I brag when I can. My 5 times great grandfather, Harry, was the first free Hoyt. Him and his father, David, fought against England, not only for the rights and freedoms of Vermont, but for all of us. And my family's been here. We've called these mountains home again from the early 1600s, so a long time before it was called Vermont or the United States of America. And this is so much bigger than politics. Everything comes back to politics because it runs our lives. Everything influenced every day is because of politics. But this is our home, right?
yeah,
It's bigger.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So let's say you want to vote, because I know a lot of people are just absolutely ballistic about voting, especially where I'm from, the Midwest.
Mhm.
You can take a voter registration form and where it says state of New Hampshire, you can cross that out. And you can write Crown Colony of New Hampshire. Now, again, no, you're going to sign this document. You got to think in your head, okay, I'm two persons. I'm this all caps public corporation created by the state to act as an agency in the administration of
Right.
civil government.
If I
And I'm
want to vote,
also
or, yeah.
now you got to think to yourself through the process of naturalization, you can locate yourself as the natural person, and you can also locate the ens legis wherever you want by simply conferring nationality of a state upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. Now, when you confer the nationality of Crown Colony of New Hampshire upon yourself, Crown Colony of New Hampshire is a non-incorporated zone, and it's the actual zone of New Hampshire, and it has nothing to do with Washington, D.C. or the laws of Washington, D.C. because it's not in itself incorporated.
Wow.
It operates entirely off of one and only one thing. And you see a lot of this in the old Wild West films, common law, where you have a sheriff.
Mhm.
The sheriff is maybe has a deputy, usually not. He's got two little jail cells and a horse. And if two people want to shoot each other, what does he do? He takes them out back and he just looks around. He says, "Hey, everybody go indoors now. You're going to, we don't want any spray bullets killing anybody." And he's just a referee and he lets these two people shoot themselves to death. And if someone's running around doing horrible things and violating the rights of others, then he gets on his horse and he drives out there and he wraps them up and he gets them in there. And there's even stories where the sheriff comes and the guy says, "Okay, sheriff," and he goes with the sheriff. And then what does the sheriff do? He has a public trial. And then if they're found guilty at the public trial, what happens? They're hung publicly. And that is common law. You see it in the old Wild West films.
Mhm.
That is legitimate. Those films do a very good job of describing the simplicity of common law. Common law is located in the Crown Colony of New Hampshire. Now, state of New Hampshire is an incorporated body. State of New Hampshire is located only and exclusively inside of Washington, D.C. And when you naturalize into state of New Hampshire, you're naturalizing into
Washington.
Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Now, you can naturalize yourself as the natural person, and you can also naturalize your ens legis. So let's say, for example, you wanted to run for governor.
Mhm.
You could sign a document stating that you are a U.S. citizen, stating that you are naturalizing yourself into state of New Hampshire, but on the signature line, you're going to write without prejudice, which means that it's all rights reserved. It's the same terminology, without prejudice. Below that, you're going to write by colon your human name, however you want to write that. It should be a little different than your all caps name. That way it can be easily determined. comma, agent, for colon, and then your name in all capital letters, comma, principal. And you can even write up a power of attorney between yourself and your ens legis. Now, at that point, what's happening is that through the power of attorney, which gives you the power to operate on behalf of another person, you are signing the documentation on behalf of this other person of which you are just the lawyer or attorney in fact or agent for. Now, by doing that, you could run for governor for a corporation called State of New Hampshire. But the thing is that you are not the person running for governor. It's the ens legis that's the person running for governor.
Gotcha. I'm the representative of
You're the
me.
representative of well, you wouldn't say that. You got to be a little careful. Now that terminology, you can't like, you're not using legal words. You're just using like, me.
Yep.
It's two different persons. You're the representative on behalf of the person that is running for governor. I am the
Gotcha.
client of, my client says, my client believes, my client this. And it sounds totally insane. But what's funny is that let's say, for example, you were to run for governor in that way and you were to talk in that way and they were to deny you running for governor, you could actually sue. And I'm telling you, you'd probably win because that would actually be considered discrimination for your client, which is your name in all capital letters.
Well, I'm going at him from all angles because again, my
Yeah.
experience with the judicial system, right behind education reform is judicial reform for me because it's not a fair system, and I'm watching people go through it, and again, that two-tiered system, and you really have to be educated on this because they take extreme advantage, and even the judges, you're saying a lot of the judges again will help you destroy lawyers. In my experience is when you follow it, the judges are again, they're the captain of it's maritime law, statutory law, they're the captain of the ship, and they're there for the corporation too. They're not there for you, the person who's usually getting hosed. Right now, when can you start this process? Like I know a lot of people, again, New Hampshire, we're talking about New Hampshire a lot. We have a J6 woman who's been, again, she's being persecuted, and they just violate every civil liberty and right and law. Again, the law doesn't apply, the Constitution doesn't apply. They're doing whatever they want. But if someone's already in it like that, again, the state, the corporation already has their claws into these people. Can you still get out at that point, or you got to go through that system?
Yeah, the main issue that everyone's running into is that you have identified with the all caps name as a corporation and you have said that you are that corporation. That is the issue. So
Mhm.
the situation is when you learn the definition of the word person and you learn the definition of the term United States and you learn the definition of how they've done state of this, state of that, and
Mhm.
you learn the definition of what I consider one of the most important things besides the word person, which is like as important as it gets. This term naturalization, being the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. What happens is you're now two different persons. Okay. Now, the way this works is you've heard the term American national, you've heard the term state national, you've heard all these different terms, right? That term is right here. The term national means a person. Now, again, what is a person? We're going to cover it again. It means an individual or an organization, which I know blows people's minds. It's always very difficult
Right.
for new people to wrap their head around that. The term national means a person owing permanent allegiance to a state. Now, this word permanent also really trips people up, right? Now, it's a
Mhm.
special definition. You can tell because it's clickable here. The term permanent means a relationship of continuing or lasting nature, as distinguished from temporary, but a relationship may be permanent even though it is one that may be dissolved eventually at the instance of either the United States or of the individual in accordance with law. So, what's funny about this word permanent is it means absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Right.
So you can actually remove that word permanent. So if let's reread it again now, and let's just remove that word because that word is basically worthless. It means nothing. It's just circular. The term national means a person owing allegiance to a state. Very, very simple. Now, if we were to go to my explanatory statement, I've written a document that basically the way the document works is you attach it to the back of the DS11 passport application form in order to get the special national foreign national passport, which gives you back all of your rights as an American. Because an American is somebody who lives in one of the unincorporated states, not someone who lives in one of the incorporated states that are all located in the District of Columbia. So the word national makes it seem as though you're a foreigner. You are a foreigner. A true American is a foreigner to United States, which I
Right.
know is kind of goofy and weird, right?
The corporation. Well, it's the definition. This
Corporations.
is
Yeah.
the first time I heard grammar fraud. I mean, I was a solid C student. I always sucked at spelling, or did I? We're learning about spellcasting, and again, the way they've hijacked our language along with everything else. But this is what screws people up. This is why people are scared, I think, because you don't want to go in there and say me or person or citizen or all these things where they've literally changed definitions to use it against us. That's the scary part, I think.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, it's really not all that complicated once you really understand it more. And then, like I said before, the most important thing, one of the most important things,
Mhm.
is just make sure that you just redefine all those words and take them back. You never let anyone behave in a way that prevents you from using the words that you want to use, which there's a lot of that in the area of which I operate. And you just want to redefine these words and take them back. They stole them, and you're just taking them back. It's not a
Mhm.
problem.
I
You're going to
love it.
force them to do the same thing they do to you, but it's going to be so much more fun because the thing is, you have truth and God on your side. They do not. So when you redefine these words and you take them back, they do not have any option at all to fight against that. They only have power when you duck and weave and allow them to use stolen words, which I do not recommend that people do. And with that said, there's a couple areas here that are very, very clear for a lot of people who think that this is all kind of hogwash or whatnot. We have 8 USC 1401. This is a list of various things that make people nationals and citizens at the same time. There's actually two different things. Nationality and citizenship are two entirely different things, as we've already kind of covered, right? Now, 1408 covers the various points of persons who are nationals but not citizens of the United States at birth. And you can see that echoed in the I-9 form, which is the employment eligibility verification form. And if you look at the main section here, we have here check one of the following boxes to attest to your citizen or immigration status. Box number 1 is what everyone checks, citizen of the United States. That's someone who actually is living in the District of Columbia and they
Mhm.
work for the government. Someone who is a citizen of the United States does not live in the United States of America. They live in a foreign incorporated zone called United States. People who live in United States as a U.S. citizen do not have the Constitution because the Constitution only applies to people who live in the unincorporated United States of America.
Wow.
People who live in the unincorporated United States of America, such as the Crown Colony of New Hampshire, would
Mhm.
be box number 2, a non-citizen national of the United States. Okay. So if you work for the government and you're a public officer of the government, you would check box 1. If you live in any of the 50 states and you don't work directly for the government, you would check box 2. Now, when you check box 2, you now officially have congratulate yourself because you've now regained your nationality as an American and you now have the Second Amendment, the Ninth Amendment, and all the good stuff. You didn't have it up until then because US citizens don't have that. And what's so cool is that if you get rid of your citizenship, you always have your nationality. They're two totally separate things, right? Now, this is very interesting. 22 CFR 51.2 says here, it's very clear. Passports are only issued to U.S. nationals. What's the definition of a national? Let's go
Right, we
back
just went
to
through. Yeah.
term national means a person owing permanent allegiance to a state. Does it say anything there about being domiciled or resident of that state at all?
Mhm.
The answer is no. You can pledge allegiance to something that you do not live inside of. So it says here passports are issued only to a U.S. national. Now you ask yourself, what is a U.S. national? It's defined right here in 8 USC 1101, subsection A22. The term national of the United States means one of two things. A citizen of the United States, which is, we've already covered what that is, or B, a person who, though not a citizen of the United States, owes permanent allegiance to the United States. You can live in France and don't speak any English, and you could owe permanent allegiance to the United States without having to live in America or speak English.
Mhm.
So now you go to it's only to US nationals. What's a US national? One of those two things, right? Now, the I-9 is clear about that. All these things are clear about that, right? And there's one more thing on this I wanted to show. I believe it's 22 USC 212. So persons entitled to a passport. No passport shall be granted or issued to or verified for any other persons than those owing allegiance, whether citizens or not, to the United States. Now we can go here to definition of U.S. person in the USC. And there's this other
Goes-
term here called
This goes
U.S.
back to like at
person.
one point, we didn't need passports to travel,
Yeah,
and now we do.
that's right. Yeah. Well, a lot of that comes down to, the government got incorporated and they opened up all these corporations, and now it's all very confusing because the word person could mean the corporate
Another way
version of
to
you or yeah.
regulate you, restrict you, control you, ultimately tax you, lock you up,
Yeah. They're locking
make
up the
more
corporate
money.
body.
Yeah.
It's the corporate body that you are identifying yourself in, right? So the thing is that no passport shall be granted or issued to or verified for any other persons than those owing allegiance, whether citizens or not, to the United States. Now, the term allegiance can be qualified. If you look in my explanatory statement and you type in allegiance, right, you'll see here. Oops, do I have it correct here? Uh-oh, how do I spell allegiance? I am falling down here. Let's see.
Well, I just told you how bad I was.
There it is. Yeah. So let's go back here, type that in. There we go. So let's see here. Here we go. To clarify what is meant by allegiance, and this is what is attached to the passport application, the DS11 form. If anyone is not familiar with that, we can look that up real quick. Form DS11. This is the application for a U.S. passport. You will see these little packets at your post office, etc. This is what you filled out to get your passport. Okay,
Just had to
now,
redo mine. Yeah, I'm very familiar.
yeah, so it says here, to clarify what is meant by allegiance, right? I will defer to Black's Law, second edition. The definition in Black's Law, second edition, is very good, in my opinion. By allegiance is meant the obligation of fidelity and obedience which the individual owes to the government under which he lives or to his sovereign in return for the protection he receives. It may be an absolute and permanent obligation, or it may be qualified and temporary. This is where things get interesting because you can actually write up a qualified allegiance statement. And by law, they have to give you a passport. You don't have to live in the United States to be issued a passport. You simply have to issue a qualified and temporary statement of allegiance.
I didn't know you could do it temporarily.
Yeah. A lot of people have a lot of issues with the word permanent and
Well,
pledging
they don't tell
allegiance.
anybody this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
this is pretty incredible, and I love how you're able to not only pull them off the top of your head, but the fact that you've got them all lined up, and we can show people.
Yeah. So this is the qualified and temporary statement that I use just in mind that I give away for free that most people enjoy. I mean, obviously, these documents are downloadable and you're supposed to adjust them, put your name in it, change it as you see fit, right?
Hmm.
So it says here, to be clear, I am not an enemy of the incorporated entity that calls itself United States. But since I do not live in that area, nor do I have much in the way of contractual obligations with that area, my allegiance lies simply in the ideas that are found within the incorporated body that would match up with the definitions of nation and peace. So this is a very interesting point. This is very mind blowing. So I did a little bit of research. The word nation and the word state mean basically the same thing. So I dug around and I found this definition in the legal system of the word nation. And it's pretty mind blowing. Definition of nation is an independent body politic, a society of men united together for the purpose of promoting their mutual safety and advantage by the joint efforts of their combined strength. But every combination of men who govern themselves independently of all others will not be considered a nation. A body of pirates, for example, who govern themselves are not a nation. To constitute a nation, another ingredient is required. The body thus formed must respect other nations in general and each of their members in particular. Such a society has her affairs and her interests. She deliberates and takes resolutions in common, thus becoming a moral person who possesses an understanding and will peculiar to herself and is susceptible of obligations and rights.
Wow.
It says nothing about location. It
Yeah.
says nothing about territory. And I can actually double verify that. If you go to the Foreign Affairs Manual, which is the section that the Passport Office, the Department of State uses, and you go to 8 Foreign Affairs Manual, FAM 505.2, talking about all this special passport stamps that you can get. And you go down to the Diplomatic Endorsement Code 11. This one talks about how the bearer of Diplomatic Endorsement Code 11 is an ambassador at large. Now, if you look at the example they use here, such as example is ambassador at large for global women's issues. It's the same thing for the United Nations. The United Nations is not a location. The United Nations is nothing more than an idea. It's a group of individuals operating in a certain way. Global women's issues is also not a location.
Mhm.
It is a group that has some sort of, greater thing for humanity and some sort of like wonderful, larger situation. So if you look at the word nation, the nation does not include any sort of territory and is not bound by location or territory. And in fact, has nothing to do with location or territory. It has to do with a group that has internal tranquility, external tranquility, and decorum and morals, and operates as a moral group, right? Now, if you go one step farther and you want to find out, for example, 18 USC 11 defines what a foreign government is in relationship to the corporation. The term foreign government includes any government, faction, or body of insurgents within a country with which the United States is at peace. Now, this is the most important part, irrespective of recognition by the United States. So a nation is a nation without having to be recognized.
Wow.
And all you do to become a nation is you simply naturalize into that nation by conferring the nationality of the state of that nation upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. When you do that, you become a national. A national is the same term. If you go to 8 USC 112, it shows you all the different terms that they use for somebody who's part of a foreign government or foreign nation
Mhm.
or national, right? We have these different terms. We have the term foreign government. We have the term foreign official. We have my personal favorite called an internationally protected person. We have an international organization. We have the one we've already covered, which is national of the United States. We also have another term here called official guest. So if someone says, are you a US citizen? You would say, no, I am one of these following things. The one that's my favorite personally is an internationally protected person.
Yeah. I
They
like
also
that
call it
too.
an IPP, right? So
Wow.
as an IPP, you are a foreign government, you are a foreign official, and you could actually file for being an ambassador at large for your particular nation. The
Wow.
nation does not need to have a specific location because the definition is not location based, right?
Well, from here you even get into your own banking and all that other stuff too, right?
Precisely. And the way that you get into banking is you would sign an OC-10 agreement with the Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
OC-10 agreement is the agreement that establishes Federal Reserve discount window access. The way that works comes from 12 USC 412, right? It's very, very clear. So what they do is they take your application when you fill out a loan for a car or a house. They collateralize that application and they go to what's called the Federal Reserve window and they write an application for notes and they exchange the value of that application for Federal Reserve notes. And they turn around and they give you your own notes back at interest. If you would like to establish your own access to the Federal Reserve window, you can fill out an OC-10 agreement and you can actually get access to the Federal Reserve window to exchange promissory notes and bills of exchange yourself and operate as a bank by yourself.
Wow. So we're talking about again for all the people that are watching and waiting for their truckload of Nasara money, Jasara. We're talking about you become your own banking system. That's your money to start with, the placenta trust, right? This is basically what your acts, when you go to the bank to borrow money for a car or a house, it's actually your money that you're borrowing back. This gives you access to that money, is what you're saying?
Well, you can actually do what's called a special endorsement. So if you read UCC 3 is where all the information is in terms of
Wow.
how all this works. It's called negotiable instruments. It's under UCC 3. You can see here negotiable instruments. Now, if you go down to there's a couple points that are really important when it comes to this. So what happens is when you have a loan, let's say for example a loan for a car, right, and you sign that loan with just your name, right, you
Mhm.
don't put anything else on there, right, which is what everyone does. That's called a blank endorsement. If an endorsement is made, blah blah blah, a blank endorsement is one that does not state a payee. It's just like you're just releasing the instrument with no conditions, right?
Mhm.
There's a different type of endorsement you can actually write on these promissory notes and bills of exchange called a special endorsement. And we actually did some digging and we went out and found a bunch of mortgages and stuff that my people got copies of. And we started finding these special endorsements on the documents. And I thought it was very revealing. So they use this term without recourse on all of these special endorsements, right? So basically, the way it works is when you do a blank endorsement, which is just signed with your name, you're releasing that particular promissory note with no conditions. Now, what they do is they now grab that fully released blank check essentially, and
Mhm.
they stamp this special endorsement on it, and they say thank you so much for donating this to us essentially, or releasing interest of it to us. We're very interested in this particular security. We would like to claim the value of this security. So they stamp a special endorsement on it after it's been released by you and you didn't know you were doing a blank endorsement.
Wow.
Without recourse, if you type that into the internet, what is without recourse, right? It's very clear. It disclaims responsibility for future non-payment
Wow.
on
So
on a
literally, when you
negotiable.
sign your loan, you just have to sign without recourse. Is the bank going to accept it? Now, the bank's got to know. They know you know at that point, right? They still go through with the loan.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If they don't, you can litigate and force them to take it. If they do, then they're screwed. We've had people who sign without recourse, and then a month later, the finance team calls them when they've already taken the car off the lot and says, "Hey, there's something wrong with your documentation and the way you sign. We need you to come back in and re-sign." And the person that's calling has no clue. They were just told by some superior that this has to happen. And if you never go back in and re-sign, you don't have any responsibility for any future non-payment on that loan, and they cannot repo the car. They may try, but at that point, you can litigate and you will win, and you'll win
Right.
theft and you'll win coercion and all sorts of good stuff.
The
Because the thing
law's
is that
on your side.
if
What
they
a
accept a without recourse endorsement, you do not have any responsibility for any future non-payment. And that's why these banks are signing these things before they go to the Federal Reserve window using the terminology without recourse. They always use without recourse.
wow.
Then they state who the payee is of the instrument. So basically what that means is we're going to hand you this promissory note. When we give you back Federal Reserve notes in check form, who do we make the check out to? Pay to the order of Wells Fargo Bank, comma, N dot A dot. So what's happening is they're saying, we don't have any responsibility with this instrument after it's processed. So don't ever come to us ever again. This is their insurance policy here without recourse. And then below that is who do I make the check out to?
Yeah. Well
So the
said.
Federal Reserve Bank at the Federal Reserve window, and this buy section is the signature of the person who's approving this particular special endorsement. And then this is their name in text form, and then comma, and then their title, right? And you can see this exact same thing repeated here, repeated here, repeated
Wow.
here. You can see the same thing repeated here, repeated here.
Well, let me ask you, Brandon, again, all of this, again, grammar fraud. In fact, that's the word of the show, right? Again, when we go into these things, most people didn't know this. It's obviously shady as shit to start with, right? I mean, they twist and we can talk about vaccines and informed consent.
Yeah.
And again, isn't this criminal? for them to, again, we
They've set
signed,
up a brilliant system where
you can't
it's
get them.
it's kind of not. Yeah, it's a brilliant,
Sovereign immunity
it's an extremely complicated, extremely massive scam that
by
is
design.
absolutely brilliant. Yeah, it's the cool, the interesting thing about studying all this is you get to a certain point where you just stand back and you go, wow.
Yeah, it,
Wow. I just
it is.
it's mind blowing that they did all this to try to just it's just so
Well, and the fact that you figured all this out pretty much on
yeah.
your own, and now you're out here sharing it with other people, I salute you. Hats off to my admin for finding you, and I'm so
Yeah,
glad.
thank you.
You're very informative, and I think the way you've laid it out, even a deer hunter can follow and understand. But I'm sure a lot of people are going to be interested in this. So, where can people that want to learn more? Is this something that can people hire you? Is this what you're doing for a living
No.
to help them? No, but
No,
you
no,
still
I don't believe I know there's a lot of that out there and it's okay. I don't feel bad about people who do it, but I think this is a road of self-discovery only. I've had some very big celebrity type people call me wanting me to do all of their stuff for them. I do not, that's not what this is. This is a road of self-discovery, a road of self sustainability, even though I hate that word. It's so hijacked nowadays.
you got to do the work though. You're not
It's
going to
yeah,
be nothing
it's
mother.
this is a lifestyle. It's not a bunch of paperwork. And I always tell people charisma and understanding is so much more powerful than a special passport, than some paperwork, because at the end of the day, they may just say, you know, this and that or whatever. But you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. They follow the law very well. But if you don't know the law and you can't defend the law and they want to test you and these kind of things, it's not, I wouldn't say it's dangerous. It's problematic to get involved in all this and have someone else do it all for you. You need to understand the basics of this information. You need to understand the basic way in which these things operate. You need to understand and be able to speak some of the lingo and understand some of the terminology. And
Mhm.
when you do, you can just ride over these accountants and these lawyers and these people like they're just nothing. It's
Well, I'm sure a lot of
very
people are
empowering.
interested to do that. Again, that is
Very
empowered,
empowering. Yeah, very,
right?
very empowering. And the
I
thing
can
is
see
that you can
that, and I know
still
we
run
can.
for governor or whatever you want to do. You know,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Well,
You're two persons, you know.
it's
So
always
it's
been my catch 22 because again,
yeah,
I don't, my pitch as governor is I don't want to govern anybody. I
yeah,
really don't. I mean, we don't need me or Phil Scott or anybody to tell us what to do. Vermonters are good people. I
yeah,
want to govern an out of control system. So again, I have to get into that system that I want nothing to do with in
yeah.
order to take it down. But again, I don't want to be that governor. The tax system, education system, judicial system, everything. That system, I think, is gone actually. But I'm
You
going to
can
be part of this
run,
system, whatever the new one is, right?
yeah, you can run for governor of the Crown Colony of New Hampshire, and what you're doing is you're running as a non-incorporated
I'll have to, it's
man.
Vermont. I'll have to go back and look up Vermont.
Vermont,
But
Crown
yeah,
Colony of
I get
Vermont.
the
It's Crown
idea. Yeah, yeah.
Colony, Crown
Was it?
Colony, right?
Yeah.
The Crown Colony of Vermont is a common law zone. It's an unincorporated common law zone, and you would be operating as basically the way that a governor would have operated prior to 1871. So if you were to do a little research and find out what did a governor do and how did a governor operate in, let's say, 1820,
Mhm.
it would be the exact same system that you would be moving into. And the beautiful part about running for governor of the Crown Colony of Vermont is you don't have anybody else running.
It's true. Well, I always said even in the junk system, like I spent in 2022, I sent back everybody's campaign money. They sent me money, and it's a rigged system. I'm not going to throw my money into it. Why would I throw your? So I raised a total of like I don't know $200 in the checks that I couldn't come back, and then I spent a grand total of $750 compared to my governor spent 1.6 million. This is a run for governor. Now the amazing part of that is I came in third and I'm about to arrest number one and number two. If it takes money to get into these positions, we are all in trouble. I said that right from
Yeah,
the get-go too, but I think
yeah.
you've got a way out. And I wanted to again, we're about an hour here, and this is a great interview. I thank you for your time. But where can
Thank you.
people find you to find some of these links and resources so they can do it on their own?
So I have a very silly, kind of very young, kind of Beavis and Butthead way that I teach all this, which is kind of like I did it on purpose because I was
Go
trying
ahead,
to
say it. It's
entice a lot of
okay.
the So it's onestupidfuck.com. That's my website. And it's very silly, very, very goofy. And I did that on purpose to try to entice the younger crowd into learning about their country and their future. And I've done a pretty good job of it. So
I think you have. The pickles work and the same
yeah,
thing. I mean, you're a young man
yeah.
by comparison to what you know and what you're doing.
Thank
And
you. Yeah.
that's what I want to make sure everybody out there is paying attention to this, because while we're struggling and complaining and trying to make ends meet, you're missing we're doing it. We're actually doing it. People
Yeah,
like
this is
Brandon,
getting very big, very fast.
I
And
bet.
yeah, there's not just me teaching this. There's a lot of different people. And in 2022, when I was first starting to study this at the very end of 2021, there's almost no information online. It was very horrible, very, very terrible. It was very unorganized. I ended up reading a bunch of books on Amazon that I bought that were very well organized, that were very good. But nowadays, there's so many TikTok channels and some, I mean, the past
Out there.
year and a half, no joke. You couldn't avoid this information if you try. And there's all these young people, and exploded is an understatement. I mean, it's like the new internet or the new cell phone or the new,
I think
it's huge.
people are tired of the same old stuff. We were talking about lawyers before, right? And
Oh yeah,
whenever whoever decided to make lawyers politicians, I'll shoot that guy myself. That was probably a mistake. So we're ready for a
so
few
bad.
more, deer hunters and loggers and farmers and
Yes, I agree
electricians,
with you.
particular
I don't fit
people.
that category myself, but I grew up around a lot of that, and I think that's what people want in a position of political power, because I think that's
I like a little
what
honesty,
people trust.
integrity.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd vote for you. I just met you, Brandon.
Thank you.
And I gotta ask you before we go, like the name Brandon. I said the same thing. Everybody named Karen. Like, oh man, I'm sorry. Do you get heat for your name? Like, let's go, Brandon. This one's for real. Let's
It's not
go.
heat. It's people love it and they use it, and it actually works in my favor. So it's actually nice.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
nice.
I've heard that a million times, and it's a beautiful thing. I've heard a lot of things, and Williams. It's also kind of ironic because the last name Williams, I believe there was 11 or 12 families that came over on the Mayflower. So my lineage is very deep in your area.
Nice.
Williams was one of those original 11 families. If you look up the original families that came
Wow.
here,
Bunch of
and
inbreeders.
there's a good side about that, and there's a very dark side about that, because what did those people do when they came here? It's very horrible. So
Yeah.
there's two sides of that coin. But my lineage is very deep in that area of the Crown Colonies. So I don't know a whole lot about it, but I feel like, yeah, it's making true to my
That's what I
lineage and
said. A
making,
bunch of inbreeders. We're probably
yeah.
related. I think you
Yeah,
are my brother in this life, at least, and
probably,
I
yeah.
appreciate your effort. So everybody who watched, thank you for tuning in. Click the Rumble button. Go check out Brandon's stuff. I think it's legit, and I think it's something worth looking into, and I hope people do. Do you want to say anything in closing, Brandon, before we
No, I
shut?
appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I mean, very good, and I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, and I hope your listeners really love it. So yeah.
I think they will. If they have my listeners are advanced, so I think they're ready for it. And they've heard a lot of this stuff. We've heard all these things that we've talked about in tonight's show and other podcasts and
Mhm.
other things. I think you were a little more complete. And it's yet another resource. Again, I
It's
tell
been a lot
everybody,
of
don't
work. Yeah.
don't take my word for it either. I'm a deer hunter from Vermont. Why the hell would anybody ever believe me? But I can show you some links, show you some really cool people that guide you. And then ultimately, I just want to make sure you have the information. And
Yeah.
then if you have all the information, you decide. And I'm cool with that too. As long as you got all the information, I think I'm happy with the choices people make.
Me too. I think the missing element is that I don't tell people what to do, and I don't do it for you, but I will tell you the truth of the matter as best I can, and I will try to show you, and I will dig until I can find the basic elements of how it works. And then from there, you now have the information that you need to make the best decision for yourself and your family and your existence. And I say, as long as I can deliver that information to you so you can make that decision, then whatever it is that you want to decide, then fine. It's an informed decision rather than an uninformed decision. And I think the uninformed decision is the real shame.
Yeah, me too. And we're not
Yeah.
giving away any fish. We're teaching people how to fish. I
Yeah.
love you for that. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
me, Brandon. Thanks everybody else for joining us again. We'll see you again real soon. See ya.
Thanks. Thanks, Kev.